Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that I had I had exit interviewed everyone who was at that lunch. After the lunch, we didn't have any recording devices, and none of us took any notes while we were at the lunch. And I wanted to capture as much of it as I could, and I made some notes after talking to everyone. We actually covered about 54 different topics, a wide range of topics over 3 hours. And with Warren, there isn't much that's not in the public domain, and I don't think he told us uh, much that we couldn't have found somewhere else. But what the lunch did for me, it helped me calibrate and understand better uh, what is really important to him, and this kind of way he thinks about it. And a few things that kind of stood out is one is this discussion that we had with him about the inner scorecard versus outer scorecard, and he mentioned at the lunch that it wasn't out then, but it was about to be released in Alice Schroeder's biography. So if you read her biography, you can find uh, a bit of a write up on that front. And he said, would you like to be the greatest lover in the world but known as the worst, or the worst lover in the world but known as the greatest? And he said, if you know how to answer that question, you've got it made. So what what became clear is that Warren clearly marches to his own drummer, and to a very large extent, he does not care what the world thinks, and so he is uh, he is very willing to uh, to take a stand which is unconventional, which is even unpopular, and he doesn't really care what the impacts are. And then, just one example would be, the way, he's a guy in the Midwest, but he has a wife and a mistress for decades, and he's in the public eye, and it's an irrelevant data point for him as to what uh, people would think of it or make of it. So that is a person who's in a scorecard, and I think in investing that is very important because you want to have independence of thought. So typically, when you're making investments, they will tend to be as a value investor, they tend to be cheap. Usually, they tend to be cheap for a particular reason, and that reason is probably believed by lots of people. And so you're in effect taking a contrarian view, and so you need to have conviction in those contrarian views. So that was one thing. The second is that when we talked to him about, I I asked him a question about Rick Guerin, because at that time I hadn't heard about Rick Guerin in several decades after the 70s, and I knew that Buffett and Warren and Rick were close, and there was only the two of them who were partners. So I just asked Warren, "Hey, what happened to Rick Guerin?" And he converted almost any question into a learning opportunity. And so the way he answered the question was that he explained how Rick was levered um, going into the big downturn in stock prices in 73, 74. And because he was levered, he got margin calls and such, and he got squeezed, and he actually was forced to sell his blue chip stamp and Berkshire shares to like Sequoia Fund and Buffett at the prices at that time, which were nothing. I think he sold Berkshire stock at $40 a share to Warren or something like that. And then Warren went one step further. He said that Charlie and I always knew that we were going to get very rich, um, but we weren't in a hurry, and Rick was in a hurry. And then he went even one step further than that. He said that if you're even a slightly above average investor and you spend less than you earn, you cannot help but get wealthy over a lifetime. And you can clearly see that this is front and center, very important to Warren. So Warren is not interested in swinging for the fences on the investing side. He wants to make sure the downside is well protected. He definitely does not want to use a lot of debt and such. And we know that all those things about Warren from the public domain, but what it's seared in for me that you know he could have run Berkshire in a manner that would have ended up with a stock price even 2 or 3 times where it is today. But that isn't the important thing for him. The important thing for him is to to finish first. You have to first finish, and so he took the patient, steady route, and that's a very important lesson for investors. Is to take a very patient and steady route. And I just wanted to highlight that in the context of something I ran into recently. And Arvind may know this, but Fidelity recently did a study of which brokerage accounts at Fidelity perform the best. And maybe Arvind has more color on it, but they studied all the different brokerage accounts, and there were these two people who were talking about it, James O'Shaughnessy and another guy, and then the other guy was joking, yeah, it was the people who were dead whose accounts performed the best. And then James O'Shaughnessy said, no, that's close. It was the people who had forgotten that they had accounts at Fidelity. So when they looked at the performance of these different brokerage accounts that had stocks in them, the ones that performed the best were the ones that had absolutely no activity for a very long period of time, which means people had picked a few stocks, and then these guys just forgot they even had that account, and in the end, those accounts perform the best. That just shows you how good brain power does for you in investing. And so there's a tremendous lesson in what Buffett is saying, and there's a tremendous lesson in that Fidelity study. So the number one skill that you can bring to bear in investing is patience, extreme patience. And you even if you go back and look at stocks you bought 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and you have sold them, just look at how they've done, and many of them would have done vastly better than you would have thought, and they've probably done well even after you sold them and so on. So those are some of the lessons that stand out.